Well then, let's see how this goes, huh? And YouTube still hasn't registered anything. Joyous. Hmm. Okay, well, that is actually running live. Even though the studio doesn't actually say that it is. Well, that's fun. Okay, well, that is actually running live. Even though the studio doesn't actually say that it is. All right, well, now to tell people that I got it to work. Yee. Hmm. Okay, let's see. Start by going to Twitter. I know, I know. Like, shouldn't you have done all this beforehand? Well, I wasn't sure exactly which steps I would need to go through. It's annoying that way. That's. Mm, oh, right. Well, that's part of it done, anyways. We. Yeah, no one's actually watching yet. That's a bummer. But hey, whatever. Gives me time to finish copy pasting the announcement into several places. Hmm. Well, okay, this has so far been a bit boring, but whatever. Hmm. Okay, and I guess one more. Anyway, I guess that's enough of clicking on things to. Well, wait, no, there's a few more I needed to do. Huh. Why did that link twice? I don't get it. That popped in twice. Huh. Interesting. Well, this is why I have a specific window using for displaying the memory alpha page I'm going to be using as a reference here. That way, I can look at other things in completely different browser windows if I want to. Hmm. Yeah, because the one thing on Discord is acting like the stream hiccuped or something. I don't know. Whatever. Let's get on with it. Alright, so, once a Klingon. This is something that they were working on prior to Heart of Glory. And Herbert Wright and Dorothy Fontana, those are people who did some really good work. Now, one page memo sent from Gene to Robert Justman commented that although he approved the story, it seemed to him like it might be expensive. Therefore, he listed 4 of the episodes outside the financial, which were visual effects, especially makeup involved in portraying the Klingons, guest cast overtime, and set construction. Um, huh. Yeah, it doesn't say anything about what it actually was, though. That's unfortunate. I mean, because Heart of Glory is actually an episode of TNG that had what I would expect to have been a significant budget because of the fact that you have the Tellurian freighter ship itself. They needed a studio model for that. You had shots of the interior of the Tellurian freighter. Again, set work that they didn't have just laying around. And, all of the aliens that you have there, because the Tellurians don't look like humans. Granted, they're one of the more subtle alien makeup looks, but still. And you have multiple Klingons. Not really a whole lot I can say on that one at this point, though. One and Lonely. Yeah, all we have on that one's name. One Little Ship Precursor. Now, okay. One little ship was a Deep Space Nine thing, which was a strange idea about a ship getting compressed and shrunk into a tiny size. Well, here's the thing. Um, that also happened in Star Trek: The Animated Series, because animated series had the Terratin incident, which Terratin or Terra 10, spelled TEN with a space, was a TAS episode about a lost colony of Earth that had gotten lost because of the fact that the planet that they'd settled on had a strange sort of emanation that it caused people who went to that planet to be shrunken to a tiny size. And thus, the ships that had visited the system had missed them. They just couldn't see them because their ship sensors didn't register uh, such tiny creatures as even living, apparently. It's very strange. But the Terra 10 incident was something similar in concept to the whole, like, oh, hey, the negative space wedgie has made you shrink. Well, in the Terra 10 incident, the negative space wedgie is being anywhere near that planet. Yeah, yeah, avoid the planet Terratin. Anyways, though. Oh, also, it's called Terra 10 because it was supposedly the 10th colony ship sent out by the United Earth whatever expeditionary force. Don't know if it actually was the 10th one or not in terms of canon. I don't remember any of the other ones actually being given numbers in terms of like mission numbers. They didn't actually, I don't remember if they actually even gave the ship name in that one, but whatever. Oh, and this one had been proposed. Um, mm, oh wait, no, he brought it up again in the sixth season, I guess. A cute comedy. Although, okay, looking at it from a TTRPG standpoint, a comedy mishap episode is definitely something you can do. All right, moving on. The inner light. The outer light. Oh, a return to the Catan plot element. You know, that is actually one thing I found to be interesting to ponder about the whole Catan story in the inner light. Did they actually only send one probe to carry the remnants of their civilization? Hmm. Well, this idea is that no, actually, they did send more than one probe. And that the second one actually might have had some of the people um, from Catan in it in suspended animation. Totally believable, honestly. Like, why on earth they did probe but they didn't have any people in it was something I found to be kind of unbelievable. It's like, because the probe that Picard finds is a long ways from the planet. Or are they trying to say that Catan was destroyed like centuries ago and the probe has been drifting through intergalactic space all this time or something? I don't remember all those details. Hmm. Well, and see, that's an interesting thing. It's like Gendel, who had written The Inner Light, had apparently written it as kind of sort of like the start of a story, not a fully complete story in and of itself. And that's an interesting take on it, in that that's the reason why Gendel had attempted to write a follow up, is that to him, the story wasn't complete. Yeah. All right, that does actually make sense. There were certain aspects of the Inner Light when I did the um, review on that one, or read over that one, that didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Is because of it just felt like they're going to a lot of work to introduce an alien of the week, and then like, oh, by the way, they're all dead, and you'll never see them again. Really? But apparently, his actual idea was using that episode to introduce the Catan, and then go back and look for them later. That is actually pretty interesting to me. All right, well, let's see here. Out of time. Alexander Rozhenko. Yeah. This is actually something that is pretty similar to something they did in Deep Space Nine. Yeah. Um, because like Molly O'Brien, I think it's who it was, is that gets lost on an alien planet for like 10, 15 years and grows up to be this sort of like wild bushwoman because there's no tech on the planet. It's just a jungle world. And Molly has to learn to survive in the jungle world. And when um, O'Brien gets back to the planet, he's like, "Oh, well, you aren't really at home in Deep Space Nine. You're at home on that jungle planet. You don't really want to live in Deep Space Nine. So, you know what? Because I love you and stuff, and presumably we can come back and visit or something, I'll just take you back to the jungle planet and let you live on the jungle planet since that's what you like or something." Well, that one ended up with the bizarre time distortion thing undoing itself because the fact that Molly, the older Molly, goes like backwards through the time distortion, finds her younger self who had just gotten to the planet, and sends her younger self to the time that she'd just come from because after having done the whole like time travel through the whatever time distortion thing more than once, the older version of Molly had figured out how to make it work the way she wanted it to, and thus was able to get her younger self to return to the right period in time, thus undoing the entire story. So that while Keiko and Miles O'Brien remembered having met the older version of Molly O'Brien, the older version of Molly O'Brien no longer existed. The temporal paradox had removed itself from existence. This is something that's, a similar story idea. It's like Alexander gets displaced in time, gets forced to grow up to be a warrior without his father. And for this one, they decided to go with the angle of Alexander thinks that Worf abandoned him, and that's why he's bitter. That is an interesting idea. However, I can see why they wouldn't want to do this one. And especially since, yes, Alexander's a minor character, but now you're Basically, just getting rid of that minor character permanently. Now, the whole idea of like the whole like lost childhood angle. Well, one of the things that was different in the way they did it with Molly O'Brien is that Molly O'Brien, due to being such a small child, um, her cave woman adult version was functionally mute. It's not that she couldn't talk, it's that due to the fact that she'd been living alone like that for so long, she'd just kind of sort of not practiced it often enough to actually be any good at it. I mean, she understood people when they were speaking to her. She just wasn't able to articulate her thoughts in an efficient manner. Wonder if that would happen with Alexander. But anyway, using this in a TTRPG. This is the sort of thing that I would have like okay, obviously it's a negative space wedgie plot, but I wouldn't have the displaced individual being one of the cast or the party of the players. I would have the negative space wedgie affect an NPC, and then you would have to, figure out how to fix what happened to the NPC. Because again, it's like that was the whole thing with Molly is that the older version of Molly managed to figure out how to fix the negative space wedgie. Granted, this was seemingly random chance, but the nature of the temporal distortion was, something that went kind of like a doorway in time. So going back through the doorway the other direction would actually send you to the time period that you had originally left from. This story here, though, this idea doesn't seem to have that aspect to it. And I think that the later treatment with Molly O'Brien, that was actually something that was a good thing, is because it let them play with the idea of Molly as a grown woman, but it's not really Molly. It's a different person completely, which is also why what makes you happy when the thing gets undone, because like yes, the adult version of Molly is a nice person and all, but you'd rather see the Molly grow up normally rather than being marooned on a planet. And the older version of Molly apparently felt that way too. So she felt that she would have been better off growing up on Deep Space Nine and not growing up on whatever planet it was. Oh yeah, Times Orphan. That's the name of the episode. Sixth season episode, Times Orphan. And again, Times Orphan fixed the issue of getting rid of the character by having a undo button to the negative space wedging. Past Lives. This was originally proposed for TNG Season 2. Fred Bronson and Susan Sackett. Okay. It's the first story they paired up to write, which they did after realizing both of them had been pitching stories which kept being rejected. Regarding the subject of past lives, it of the time was unexplored territory, but now would sound old hat. Involved a woman from the future coming back and accidentally causing the death of Captain Picard, and them having to fix that damage in time, and it involved Romulans and Klingons. I mean, that does sound like a very, very typical Star Trek thing, honestly. None of that sounds all that unusual, out of the ordinary, or, well, okay, interesting. Yeah, Yeah, we can just say that. Doesn't really sound particularly interesting either. But, I mean, that's the basic bare bones of the plot and not the full thing. Now, this explanation of the plot doesn't have anything else, and if you were to tinker with something like this, you would need to add some meat to these bones. Because this isn't a very in-depth idea, shall we say. But like the whole like temporal paradox stuff, that they played with that in TNG a few times. Most notably was the one with the dang it, I forgot what those guys were called. An alien race where we only ever see two members of the race as Vorgons. Yeah, the Vorgons. And the whatever crystal thingy. A time paradox where the Vorgon's like, yes, good, good, good. We were just here to help you with setting the timeline right. After Picard had destroyed the thing that they had supposedly come back to the past to steal. There's a lot of things with that episode that are basically just complete, like, oh, well, this is what we really like. Certain characters, their dialogue is the only evidence we have of what's going on. And thus, if you assume that those characters are lying, which we have no reason to believe that the characters in the episode were actually telling the truth. And we do, in fact, have evidence that at least some of what they said was lies. So we don't really know a whole lot about what the real story with the Vorgons really was. That's a fun idea. But again, that's not past lives. Past lives, yeah, weird time travel nonsense. Oh, hey, well, we don't know anything about this. Sorry, Mr. Berta did. Perchance to dream. Howard Weinstein. Ew. Now, you know what? We actually do have a thing here. Is that he wrote is a novel. How much do we know here about? Oh, well, just from the back cover. On a routine mission to survey Damaris for a Class M well with no intelligent life, USS Enterprise shuttle crewed by Data, Troy, and was the Crushers captured by a race called the Tenorons who claim the world for themselves. As Captain Picard tries to negotiate with the captain of the Tenoron ship, the shuttle suddenly disappears in a blaze of color and light. Yeah, that doesn't sound like an explosion. Tenorons have no idea what happened either. Captain Picard vanishes from the bridge and finds himself alone on the planet's surface with the Tenoran captain. As the two captains begin to work together, they realize they are not alone as they confront an incredible alien force with the power to transform a world or to destroy it. Yeah, whatever. She takes to caves like a Kavarian horn mole. I guess they're trying to say that Gina Pace likes caves. Okay. Tea. Earl Grey. Hot, presumably. Anyways. Merde. No. Mud. Yeah, this doesn't really give us a whole lot of information here. It does hint at some interesting ideas for things, like, oh, we're talking to an alien civilization that we haven't met before. Oh no, we are now doing something that we were not expecting. Dun dun dun. Well, yeah, interesting idea. That would be the starting point for a story, not the entire story. So you would have to make stuff up to go after that, because this is like the the amount of information we have about this is kind of like the before the opening credits teaser in a TNG episode. There's, three acts or four, or five. I forget exactly how many, but oh yeah, five. It was five. TNG episodes, due to the commercial breaks, would be written so that they would have, I guess, six segments. Okay, the first segment was relatively short because it was um, prepended to the opening credits crawl, which is relatively long, and thus the first, second, third, and fourth ones were the only ones that were full size segments. And the fifth one, it's a bit shorter because of the fact that the closing credits are attached to it. But, anyways, this would be like that opening one, which is, I guess you could say, like a tenth of the actual episode. Yeah, so you'd be making up like 90% of the episode if you're going to use that idea. Hey, have fun with that if you want to do it. Profit margin. Female finger named Pell, posing as a male. Pell and then Riker and then Beverly Crusher find out some kind of sisterhood relationship developing. Because you have Beverly Crusher being friends with a female Ferengi. Sure, okay, whatever. Oh, this actually did get made as a DS9 script. But obviously, because it's DS9, it doesn't involve Riker and Beverly Crusher, and they had to rearrange several parts of the plot as a result. Q stories! Ah, I see. Yeah, that actually tracks. Is that one thing people noted is that um, they didn't actually have Q in every season of Star Trek: The Next Generation because they were trying to come up with ideas. They decided all of the ideas that they had come up with sucked and decided they didn't want to use any of them. Well, let's see what they came up with and see what we can ideas we can come up with to make it better. Okay, this act start here is actually something that is a very, very good idea for a Q plot. Is Picard launches into one of his spiels about how humans have grown beyond our base instincts. We no longer are constrained by our animal desires. He did that more than once in TNG. In fact, in First Contact, when he does it, the person he's doing it to throws it back in his face and tells him, yeah, right. I've seen the way you act. You're not above any of this stuff you claim to no longer be affected by. You're affected by it just as much as anyone else is. Anyway, so sorry about that. Q creating a dark mirror of the Enterprise crew by splitting them into their good side and their bad side definitely has a fun idea to it. Now, The whole issue they mentioned here is like, oh, but we wanted to see the two ships shoot at each other. It's like, how are you going to have the two versions of the Enterprise itself, where one of them is the good version and one of them is the bad version? What would you define as the good and bad characteristics of the ship? Honestly, this actually sounds more interesting to me if you just have like twice as many people on board the Enterprise D. And this does strike me as the sort of plot idea where someone might get killed. It just feels like a plot idea that would generally lean in that direction. And quite frankly, for a TTRPG, running into your mirror selves where it's like, oh yes, this is you, but less fun. I can definitely see that being a fun idea for a TTRPG module. Trying to force people to roleplay as the, shall we say, goody two shoes version of the character they normally play would be interesting. This would not necessarily work with all groups, though, because some groups just wouldn't be into the idea of trying to roleplay their character being like fully straight laced and 100% morally correct, and then find having to fight a version of them that's the opposite. Hmm. Do. There are four by TNG rolling down. Which one appeals to you? Fusia said that one is for the first draft. Michael Pella said it wasn't workable, and we ran it by him 3 times before we finally approved the teleplay. From production sample, we had asked us, how producible is this? Almost every scene would have to be done as an optical, and it wasn't practical. And Michael said the story wasn't working practically, dramatically. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Is that in a TTRPG you wouldn't have the issue of needing to fake having people talking to themselves. They did that in several episodes of TNG, but they didn't do it for the entire episode. You wouldn't really need to do it for the entire episode, but still, it would be challenging if you were doing actual practical photography. As a TTRPG, it's a much more fun idea because you don't need to worry about any of that crap. The amusing part here, though, is that Jerry Taylor, in a retrospective, was like, you know what, we could have actually made that work. We just overthought it and overcomplicated it or something. And apparently they spent a lot of time and effort trying to figure out how to make it work and then had to scramble to finish other scripts. Pity. Oh yeah, and if this reminds you of Deadlock, yeah. Oh yeah, Enemy Within. That is actually a good point. I forgot that one. Is that in TOS you had Kirk get duplicated into so that he has to fight an evil version of himself. Interesting, but ultimately rather, I wouldn't say mundane, but it's limited in scope. So you only have a few things to talk about. You can't just examine what makes the good Kirk different from the bad Kirk, and then skip to examining what makes good Spock different from bad Spock. Oh, that's an interesting one, though. Like having the bad Spock and good Spock both act like they're just being perfectly logical beings and then coming to completely different conclusions, despite both having the same input and claiming to just follow logic to a logical output and then somehow getting a different output. IQ test. Q and another member of the Q Continuum would have had a contest between the crew of the Enterprise D, presumably mentored by Q, and the other Q would have the Zanar, a dangerous alien race that we've never heard of before. Music Q is a sort of Olympics against the other Q, and the Zanar would have been the other Q's chosen race of supermen. Hmm. The Q Olympic story was ludicrous and needed to be deep sixed. Um. Yeah, it does sound vaguely similar to TOS Arena, and in some regards, it actually sounds similar to one of the early season one Q stories, because one of the season one Q stories has the crew of the Enterprise fighting those pigmen with laser rifles. Well, the pigmen with laser rifles in a one-on-one fight versus members of the Enterprise crew were pretty much guaranteed to win. Now, having it being Olympics like competition just changed the mechanics of how this would work out, though. Hmm. Interesting, to say the least. Yeah, I do see why they would have an issue with it, and trying to use this idea in a TTRPG, huh? Not really sure. Because, as noted here, it's like the whole Olympics thing is part of what makes this rather odd. Is that how do you have player choice influence the outcome of the Olympics? That's kind of sort of against the concept of Olympic events. I mean, yeah. Although you could just use the Olympic events as a backstory, because the fact that in the episode where the Q had the Enterprise crew fighting pigmen, Q used that as an excuse for annoying Riker and trying to force Riker to become a Q for reasons that no one understands. Even today, almost 30 years later, we still have no idea why Q was seemingly trying to trick Riker into becoming a Q. Yeah, no explanation. Probably we never will get one. I don't think they're ever going to revisit that concept. Anyway, speaking of Q being insane and doing screwball things. Suddenly fractured, there was all these bizarre things happening. It was a totally nutso beginning. Picard is suddenly walking down a New York street dressed in his uniform but carrying a briefcase and wearing a fedora. He passes Riker, who is pounding on the side of a building with a loaf of bread. That's Riker's job, to pound the side of a building with a loaf of bread. A Klingon driving a taxi cab drives by, and the knight in shining armor is the cop. All this insane stuff. Huh. Um. Yeah. Would this be Worf? No, no, it's just a random Klingon. No, I can see why you wouldn't want to do this as a actual TV show episode, because filming this would be incredibly complicated and convoluted. Now, trying to do it as a TTRPG, oi, it's a crazy starting point. But what would you do with it other than make the MacGuffin fix the problem? Because obviously your goal is going to be fix the universe. In figuring out how to fix the universe, would need to be very carefully set up so that it wouldn't be an obvious, easy solution, especially if you have the party start out knowing where Q is. Dum dum dum. But yeah. I mean, again, the idea sounds cool, but it's one of those ideas where you're like, okay, we started here. Now what? Huh. Something to ponder, that's for sure. And a lot of the Q episodes do actually have like weird zany stuff like, oh, this scenario doesn't look right. This isn't reality as I remember it. What is going on? A quantum leap style story with Q. Shocker. Hmm. So having them switching them with the crew of a Romulan ship and having them basically just do the stuff that the Romulans would have been doing, huh? Now, okay, that's an interesting idea. It's like that they attempted to revive the idea in Deep Space Nine, and then eventually did develop the idea for Second Skin. Kira is kidnapped by the Cardassians, who try to convince her that she is really a Cardassian. Okay, I vaguely recall this one. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, you were a Cardassian sleeper agent. You had all that stuff you remember about being a Bajoran resistance fighters actually implanted memories, and we were supposed to retrieve you before you went irretrievably insane and permanently forgot who you were. And we think we may have been too late because you should have been, remembering your true self by this point, and you're not. Oops. Now, of course, from an out of universe perspective, you're like, haha, the Cardassians are lying. But, that is actually a plausible story for Cardassians. They have been known to do some really screwball things. Da, da, da. Anyway. Yeah. So I did one thing that here that doesn't explain is like, what is the mechanic for? Oh, it's a Q plot. Right. Q forced the certain members of the Enterprise crew to live on a Romulan ship as if they were Romulans, because why not? This would have doing Q plots in a TTRPG module is absolutely doable, and you could definitely use that as an excuse to have an absolutely zany starting position. Do need to think about where you want the episode to go, though. Hmm. But, okay, here's the thing. Wolf says that the ultimate idea that he wanted to go with ended up being very similar to Face of the Enemy, which did get produced. And Face of the Enemy is infamous because it's the only time we ever see this particular uniform ever worn by anyone in the show. Ever. Deanna Troi, as a Romulan, is the only one who ever wore this outfit. And while the rest of the Romulan outfits in TNG can be kind of sort of pieced together into a coherent idea of a progression and hierarchy and like, okay, this means that, that means this, etc., etc., etc. This one is a red herring that doesn't fit into any schema anyone has ever attempted to come up with. One, it is the only one ever seen that has an asymmetrical baldric. Why? We don't know. This rank insignia. Is that even a rank insignia? I don't know. And of course, the material is odd gray color that's different from any of the other ones we ever see too. Like, for example, this is a Romulan. Notice how this is more like a checkerboard pattern. Anyway, though, Face of the Enemy was actually about Deanna Troy doing an infiltration mission for Starfleet intelligence. She was pretending to be a Romulan in order to steal secrets from the Romulans and thus have, compromised Romulan interests or something. Uh, which, you know what? You could do that as a TTRPG. There's definitely a lot of things you could do with that. You could even do it like a split mission with like certain members of the party are embedded assets and certain members of the party are their handlers, trying to help them along with the mission from the outside. Definitely something you could have fun with. We don't really have a whole lot of information about this idea, though. Like certain aspects of it got used for Second Skin, certain aspects of it got used for Face of the Enemy, but we never actually saw the like full on idea because I guess they just never finished it to like a final plot or something. A backwards episode with reverse chronology. We kind of sort of had that come up in the TNG finale. The whole like anti-time nonsense that from an in-universe perspective may or may not have even been real because it was a Q Flash episode and it's possible that it was all just an illusion from Q and none of it actually happened. And here more says like, yes, we wanted to do this, but we couldn't figure out how to make it work. Oh. Hmm. Oh, apparently before and after reused the idea well enough that they considered it um, the at least the basic concept of what they wanted. Well. Yeah, I'm going to have to look at that eventually, but not today. Return to Forever. Written by Tercy Tomei, becoming one of those that he... Oh, this one would have had Leonard Nimoy as Spock. Obviously old Spock, but, whatever. City on the Edge of Forever, reusing the Guardian of Forever. I have a question about that. From what I've heard, the Guardian of Forever is not owned by CBS Paramount. It was actually owned by the whoever created it, and it doesn't actually have the rights to reuse it. Oh yeah, it was a Harlan Ellison idea. I mean, Oh, I see. They were actually seriously planning to do this. However, they just couldn't get Nimoy to agree to play the role. And of course, this is a Spock episode, and you can't do a Spock episode without Leonard Nimoy, or at least not back then, anyways. Nowadays, Leonard Nimoy's dead, so if you're going to use Spock, you have to recast him with someone else, which they've done. And honestly, people didn't hate it, so hey, what I. But they would have had. Yeah, well. The basic plot idea does seem like something that you could do as a time travel MacGuffin thing. Which, like I mentioned earlier about that story with Alexander and the story with Molly, is that having a negative space wedgie displace someone in time, and this use that as the idea for the mystery the players need to solve, totally works as a episode idea. Rice's story. Captain's Holiday was originally had a different form. As we all know, Captain's Holiday was the infamous episode with the Vorgons, which I mentioned earlier. Is that it's, weird, extra special alien nonsense because they're aliens from the future doing stuff that's even more inscrutable than normal. Oh, and this thing is involved. Now, what was this one and how was it different? A sideshow attracting, showing Picard his greatest fear. And Picard was afraid of becoming an admiral with a boring desk job. Okay, that is actually a key plot aspect to Picard's character as established in The Next Generation, is that he never wants to leave the captain position. He wants to stay in the captain position and never become an admiral because he thinks admirals are lame and boring. Yeah, okay. So that part checks out, at least. Oh, and yeah, Riker becoming the captain of the Enterprise. Yeah, well, if Picard had gotten promoted to become an admiral, it would have been pretty easy for Starfleet Command to be like, okay, Riker, you're in charge now. Have fun with that. It got quite far into the writing process. Gene Roddenberry ultimately it got vetoed by Gene himself because he didn't like the idea of having Picard having fears and doubts about the future. Okay then, you are a lunatic, Mr. Roddenberry. You are dead, but you were died a lunatic. Using this as a TTRPG thing, like this whole gimmick of the like sideshow attraction showing him his greatest fear, that's not much of a TTRPG module idea. That's like a 5-minute sight gag that you do as part of the story. Unless you're going to have like the players live out their greatest fear for like 20, 30 minutes, or maybe you could actually stretch that into a full mission or module or whatever. Like a telepathically induced hallucination. It kind of works as an idea, I suppose. Despite the story being junk, several plot elements later found their way into other TNG works. Roddenberry liked the idea of Rice enough to ask Barrett to write a new story where the planet was the primary setting, having just provided the frame. While the idea of a future where Picard is an admiral and Riker captain of the Enterprise was used the following year in Future Imperfect and More, made Picard's wish to remain a starship captain well into his later years a plot point in Star Trek Generations. Okay, so that was Moore's idea. Cool. Yeah. This is one of those things where, again, it's like the bones of an idea, but not a fully fleshed out idea. Doing this in TTRPG module would just be like a different explanation for why you have weird stuff happening. But this one comes with the connotation that the weird stuff happening is going to be not necessarily things that could happen in real life, but are specifically personal to the individuals involved. And that sounds kind of cool. Huh. Well, don't know anything about that one. Okay, an episode planned to involve the murder of Cardassian with Roland and can blame for that murder. Okay, you know what? Having a member of your party, one of the players having their character get framed for murder is a decent plot hook. Unfortunately, all we have on this one is a plot hook idea. Not a whole lot we can do about that. But it is something that's, a decent plot hook idea. I've been at this an hour already. Oh boy, and I'm not even close to done. Ugh. Whatever. Moving on. Roswell's story. Yeah, okay. They eventually did the same idea with Little Green Men. And how exactly this would have been different if it had been TNG? Yeah, don't know. But hey, interesting idea. Story with Sarek and Spock. I mean, we did see Sarek in an episode of TNG. And we did see Spock in Unification, but not in the same episode. Different episode. I mean, having players deal with something like this, we didn't have to figure out how exactly you were going to do that. I haven't figured out that. Until you figure that part out, Yeah, the logic behind why they decided they didn't want to try it is because of getting Mark Lenard and Leonard Nimoy on stage at the same time would have been challenging, to say the least. Although, the crew did like the idea of doing this, they just didn't ever actually do it. Oh well. So the idea here is that the plot is about what later got used in Unification, but we it would have been fundamentally different because it would have had Sarek involved, and that's all we know. C Spot Run. Oh hey, look! If you have this reference book, you can read about it. I don't. Shattered Time. Do do do. Wow. The first draft of the script was 58 pages long. Impressive. An allegory about the consequence of a misguided missile defense program adopted by an advanced alien civilization. In some ways, it reminds me of that episode of Voyager where they have that weird Cardassian juggernaut missile thingy. What exactly this advanced alien civilization would have been toying with is an interesting question, though, because all this other stuff here is about why they didn't do it and the background history of the out of universe stuff, not the in universe plot. And Pillar just didn't like the idea and went to try it. Doesn't even say why. Okay then. Oh, well, time to go. Okay, this is a strange idea. It's like a Professor Moriarty episode where Moriarty tries to trick Data into entering a virtual world to save Moriarty. Why not just turn off the computer that Moriarty's stuck in? Then you won't have to worry about him anymore. Sigma Iotia 2. Now, the original series episode, A Piece of the Action, established that the Federation did have a treaty with the people of Sigma Iotia 2, and that treaty that was established then seemed to indicate that the Federation would be making regular return visits to Sigma Iotia 2. Well, having Picard show up as one of those return visits and find out that the people of the planet were imitating Kirk's crew, or trying to, anyways, instead of 1920s gangsters would be an amusing idea. Of course, this is one of those things where um, what's the best way to put this? The basic premise is a interesting idea, but it's it's one of those things where it's the skeleton of a story, not a full story. DS9 did actually do some episodes that actually had the crew of from DS9 time travel back into TOS era. State of Mind, a story with Worf as the main character. Okay, sure. That's all we know about it. Just well for my transport ship. Doclaic Triangle. Okay, one, we already have the Delta Triangle in the animated series, which is also a space version of the Bermuda Triangle. Ships flying through the Delta Triangle will sometimes get displaced into a spatial pocket where they're stuck because the method of going from one location to another just, well, you need to run warp engines at a speed that's kind of impossible in order to get out. And Picard's idea for how to get out was required him and a Klingon captain to sync their engines with each other so that the two ships were running in tandem to escape the Delta Triangle. Now, this, however, is different in that it's not a space pocket episode. It's that the Doclaic Triangle displaces things through time. Dun dun dun. Now, yeah, that's an amusing idea. It's one of those things that takes a lot of setup work, though. And trying to do this in a TTRPG, I would probably not have the players be drastically changed. The players would basically be spectators to the fact that the rest of the ship and crew around them changed. Huh. And then when they leave, everything goes back to normal. Now, one aspect of this that I personally find to be kind of weird is that this whole, like, oh, we're jumping through alternate timelines thing. That was done in the Shattered episode, or okay, I might have gotten the wrong episode name. The one where Worf gets pushed into an alternate universe and then just starts skipping through alternate universes until he eventually gets back to the right universe. Except with everyone instead of just one character. Hmm. Um. Yeah. Interesting idea. This actually does have a little bit of meat on its bones, but doing this for TTRPG, you would have to do a lot of work figuring out how to make the alternate timelines feel uniquely interesting and also come up with an in-universe logic for why they're so different. And also, how this just going through the Doclaic triangle caused this to happen to you? That seems important. Yeah, cool idea. Could be fun. All right, storyteller. They had originally planned this to be in TNG. They later made it in Deep Space Nine. Okay. Dun dun dun. Um, they decided that it was too similar to something that they had decided to produce already. Interesting. Huh. Um, yeah. I'm not sure exactly what episode of the first season of TNG they were thinking about. Because this is the one where O'Brien becomes the spiritual leader of a Bajoran village. It's like, okay, what? How does this have anything to do with one of the TNG episodes from season 1 of TNG? I don't know. I really don't know. Unless they're thinking of that episode involving that the Mintakans. I'm not sure that was season 1 though. Well, anyway though, genuinely not sure what episode this was supposedly too similar to. Anyway, no. Tapestry sequel. Episode Tapestry. Let's see here. I'm gonna double check to make sure this is the episode I think it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is the one where we have the infamous Picard dies scene. Yeah, okay. Oh, yes. Ensign Picard being stabbed by a Nausicaan. And the reason why Picard has a cybernetic heart. This is something that's an interesting thing to remember because of the fact that when Picard gets assimilated, what do the Borg do with his cybernetic heart? It's one of those, the whole cybernetic heart thing is something that gets brought up in so few episodes that I suspect that a lot of the writers forgot that it was a plot point. That Picard is, in fact, wait. No. I looked at that backwards. The cybernetic heart thing got added to TNG in season 6. So, in no episode prior to season 6 did the writers of TNG think of Picard as having a cybernetic heart because no one had come up with that plot point yet. Okay, that checks out. So the whole Borg thing, while it should, in theory, have been an issue, the writers didn't have the whole cybernetics thing added to Picard's character sheet yet. Yep. Okay. Hmm. Doing a sequel to Tapestry though, because Tapestry was made in season 6. Doing a sequel to that would have been later in season 6 or in season 7. And has one of the people that Picard had known when he was a young Starfleet officer. Who are Marta Betanides and Corten Zoeller. Actually, the fact that they have pages tells me that they were probably in Tapestry. Dun dun dun. Yeah, it was in Tapestry. Captain Narth. Ooh. And of course, Zweller was one of the people who witnessed Picard getting stabbed by a Nausicaan. Hmm. Zweller, by rigging the Damjat table, is the reason the Nausicaans got PO'd enough to stab Picard. So he is, um, unfortunately, the reason why Picard has a cybernetic heart. And Picard's like, okay, I forgive you, but never do something that's stupid ever again, or something like that. At least Betanides didn't get stabbed horribly. Oh, and they had him in one of the novels join Section 31 and then get kicked out of Section 31 for losing his ship. Okay. Narth. We don't know anything about Narth other than that he was the captain of the Ajax. Well, I see. Yeah, Tapestry was an episode that introduced a whole lot of characters that were like people from the past that we basically just see in flashbacks. Oh, and this is a young looking person because the actress who played her was actually 17 at the time that they filmed this episode. Huh. And is supposed to be playing a character that's 21. Okay then. Hmm. So Picard actually was kind of sort of romantically involved with her, but nothing serious. Oh, and part of the whole tapestry thing was Picard finding out what his life would have been like if he had, in fact, tried to be in a committed relationship with her. Hmm. Hmm. Oh, and in Broken Pieces, they actually bring up that okay, so this actually did get followed up in Picard. Not until Picard, but in Picard. Okay then. Well, okay, enough of that. That was an interesting sidetrack, but yeah. So Tapestry did get revisited, but the whole thing with Tapestry is that Tapestry was Picard's backstory. So you're doing Picard stuff. Trying to do this in a TTRPG. Either you would be delving deep into an NPC's backstory, which, given that Picard is the captain of the ship, and I personally like the idea of doing Star Trek Adventures modules so that the captain of the ship is functionally a quest giver NPC and not a player character, that would work pretty well if you look at it from that angle. And you have to figure out a way to have the players do something. Although that does give me the idea that you could actually give players roles to play. You know, like they're acting out the past actions of people from a different time period. So, as part of acting it out, they don't play themselves. They're playing other characters, and you just like hand them character sheets, like, "Oh, this is who you are today." Have fun with that. Hmm. Oh, this is interesting because the fact that apparently Wilkerson and Matthias actually sold the script and got paid for it because of the fact that people who were doing the work acquiring scripts and deciding what to make were actually seriously wanting to make it, but just didn't actually get around to making it. Hmm. Hi, Nerdy Ogre. Okay, yes, Assassin's Creed does kind of sort of do that sort of thing, but with Assassin's Creed, it's not necessarily a single individual. It's like a group of individuals, sort of, kind of. This though is something much more like recent history than Assassin's Creed, though, and giving the players different character sheets is just because they're. It's not that they're playing people from the distant past. They're just not playing themselves because it's a different ship with a different crew and so on and so forth. Now, I can definitely see why some players would not be interested in that because, it's like, oh, but this is my character. I wanted to play my character, not, this other character. But, if I was going to do this episode, I would try to make it so that the various um, new characters at least had something in common with the characters that the players already played. So it's like, okay, if your character is an engineer, you would give them a different engineer. Someone who is, at least in certain ways, similar to the character they normally play, although not the same. But that's a lot of work for a TTRPG session. Okay, so, alright, next one, Terminus. Okay, Terminus was an idea that Lewin and Fontana were working on that hadn't been like finished as an idea and later got reworked when they came up with the idea of lore. Okay, interesting idea. I would have to read the reference book, Lost Voyages, in order to, find out what made this actually different from what they later did with lore. Sure. Thine own self be true. Okay, you could actually go and read the script on Julie King's website? Really now? Huh. Really now. Hmm. Okay, maybe you can't actually read the script. That's kind of lame. Oh, okay, the first two worked. Okay, this actually says I could teleplay by Julie King, story by Karen King and Julie King. This is 37 pages. I'm not reading all of them. I'm going to skip through this just to get a vague idea as to what it is. Holodeck morning day two. A smoky jazz bar, one of Riker's favorite programs. Riker's playing his trombone and Derek is playing a saxophone. The camaraderie from their long association is evident. The all-female audience is very attentive. You got it from the dear. Okay, one thing with this is that I'm pretty sure Derek is a holographic character. Uh, Interesting. Oh no, Derek is actually someone who is a person who is accompanying Riker in the holodeck. Interesting. Do 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 do. Why is Wesley at the con? Okay, I'm gonna close the second one. We don't think I need that. Do 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 do. It doesn't actually say exactly what season. It said the script was dated 17 November 1989, but it doesn't actually say what season they were trying to get it made in. I'm going to guess relatively late, though. I'm kind of curious who the Derek character is. I suppose if I went back to the first one or two pages of the script, I could find that part. Eddie. Hmm. Oh, children in the corridor. One of the children is named Eddie. Okay, cool. Wait, is that who Derek is? Quinn. Da, 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 da. Hmm. This is one of those things I kind of sort of feel the urge to write a summary for, but that would require me to actually like fully like read the whole thing. Hmm. Okay, so this is an episode with a weird alien of the week plot. Hmm, that's interesting. And I'm going to guess the aliens were some sort of benevolent dictatorship and sort of trying to avoid having their society get turned upside down. Wait, they actually have a character in here named Selp? SELP? Hmm. Mm. Oh, Derek was Ender's son? Uh. Dum dum dum. Okay. Yeah, this is something that's a complicated idea, and it's like reading the entire script, all 37 pages of it. Nah. Yeah. This. I'm genuinely not sure exactly what's going on here. Oh well. Yeah, this is something you could have fun with, like reading an entire script and trying to adapt the script. That could be interesting. All right, another one that would have had Troy being in command of the Enterprise. Now, we don't really have a whole lot of stuff about this, and apparently, Marina Sirtis is one of the sources of information of this in Starlog. Huh. And of course, they do in a season 5 episode actually have Deanna Troy take over. Um, Troy didn't like the idea. Okay, whatever. To be honest, the tiny scraps we have of this one, um, it sounds like they never got anywhere in to even like having like a full skeleton of an idea. It's like a few pieces of an episode skeleton. And that's not enough to actually work with. Two yuffs too many. Don't have any info about that one. Okay. What? How? Logic? This is one of those things where making alien technology weird just for the sake of being weird is interesting, but not necessarily useful. Yeah, like seriously, everything is Velcro. Even the Velcro is Velcro. Ugh. Yeah, having an alien civilization made of a single material doesn't make sense. Cure for Geordie LaForge's blindness and thus not needing the visor, blah, blah, blah. They eventually did that in late TNG. Because, like, the whole, like, cybernetic eyes thing, they did actually bring that up in TNG as a possibility. It's just that the first um, attempt at implementing the idea, Giordi reviewed the information that he was given and realized that the cybernetic eyes that they were proposing to give him had less capability than his visor, and thus it would be a downgrade and thus be something very difficult to get used to. And she already decided he didn't want to do that. And yeah, um, this particular story idea didn't really go anywhere. The Water Planet story. Oh, we're almost done. These are the last three. Whee! Alrighty then. Now, Voyager had the waters. Um, TAS had an episode with the I forget the name, but it was an ocean planet where it was basically inhabited by mer people who, as the episode progresses, we eventually find out that the inhabitants of this planet weren't always mer people. They had, at some point in their history, discovered a method of turning themselves into mer people and find a way to adapt that technique in order to turn humans into mer people and use it on Kirk, because why not? Yes, that means that they have an episode with Kirk trying to seduce one of the alien mer people. Okay, he doesn't actually try all that hard, but whatever. Now, for this particular idea, hmm. Interesting. There's handfuls of things that they hit here doesn't really give enough of an idea about what the idea even was. This is a humorous anecdote about a pitch that they were apparently given in person that they didn't even like fully write down enough. They just like wrote down a few scraps that they vaguely remembered, and that's all we've got. Um, yeah, I don't really know what, if anything, you would actually be able to use out of that. Other than the vague concept of water people. Well, there is actually one detail that they mention here is that um, make love by getting into a hot tub together. I'm not sure exactly what context in which he means make love, actually. Just have sex with each other? I don't know, maybe. But, I mean, sex in a hot tub doesn't require you to be water people. Whatever. What's Riot's story? Oh, boy. Deep Space Nine kind of sort of went there with past tense. I mean, if you really wanted to try tinkering with the idea, you could use past tense as a reference. We don't really have anything with this particular one that would actually be usable. A gay themed episode with Wesley Crusher having an alien girlfriend. Uh huh. Okay, so the first duty, this is someone who would have been on Wesley's side during the first duty. Okay. And, oh yeah, this alien species is able to change gender because they feel like it. Huh. Okay, that's just weird in Screwball because yeah. Okay, so this would be one of those things where it's a weird alien of the week episode, and understanding the nature of what makes the weird alien of the week so weird would be a key part of the episode, I suppose. Honestly, that has some merit to it. There are several things you could get out of this that would make it interesting. The problem, of course, is the simple fact that the core aspect of it is for the alien of the week to change gender so that they can bang someone and then change back to normal because of the fact that they're not actually able to stay that way indefinitely. Hmm. Problem with this idea, of course, is that what are you going to attach to that to make it a real episode? It's a very, very simple plot concept that, while workable as an aspect of a story, isn't the core of a story. It's more like set dressing. And that's the last one we have for this. Huh. Okay, so the alien girlfriend thing is something that you could play with. You'd have to put a lot of work into making it a complete story idea, though. And that, of course, is the core issue that a lot of these have, is that the write-ups that we have here, in many cases, are fundamentally incomplete. Several of them, literally, the only thing we know is the name of the episode on this submitted script idea. Don't have any idea what the actual plot of the script was. And there's several of them which can be summed up within like one sentence. And that's enough to give you ideas on how to write a story, but it's not an actual story. It's just a fragment of a story. And with that, I'm going to call this good. That was a lot of stuff to ponder, and I set out to do all of the stuff in this thing, and I finally got to the end of the undeveloped Star Trek The Next Generation episodes listing. Yay. So, I guess next time I will be working on the season 4 episodes of Star Trek The Next Generation. Because I did actually technically do one of them, but that's because the ending episode of season 3 is a two-part episode, with the first part of it being the last episode of season 3 and the second part of it being the first episode of season 4. So I did them together as a single unit. So I'm going to next time be starting with the second episode of season 4, I guess. Alrighty then. Well, oh, you know what? Let's just do one thing here. Dum dum dum. Aquans. Right. Aquans. That's who it was. And the Monians. Monians are the race from the waters. Yeah, I just felt like taking a quick look at these guys because of their whole like water planet thing. Like, yes, we have the Antedians in the next generation. Problem is with the Antedians is that we know very little about them other than them being fish people. They come to the Enterprise in these weird outfits that are kind of sort of like survival suits because of the fact that they don't live in a normal environment. They're aquatic. So they wear these weird outfits to make them more comfortable on land. The Aquans live on Argo. Argo was once a Class M planet. It shifted to becoming a Class O planet. And they had some method called Sergo Op, which caused them to turn from humanoids into fish people. They used to be proper humanoids. Yeah, and also is that well, while the episode mentions the idea of air breathing Aquans existing in the past, you don't see any in the present. Does that mean they died out? Does that mean all of the Aquans went through Sergo-Op eventually and thus got turned into water breathing Aquans? They don't bother mentioning that. So, how exactly this became a hereditary condition is also kind of interesting because of the fact that it's like, is it just like, a nature versus nurture thing where uh the child just picks it up from their mother if their mother it was like that? Because again, it's like Sergo Op isn't like genetic rewriting. It's a physical transformation, not a genetic change. Yeah, that's a weird idea. You're not rewriting their DNA to make them into a fish person. You're triggering their body to transform into a fish person without rewriting any of their DNA. And that's an interesting thing here is that the Aquan culture thinks of air breathers as violent invaders. Um, yeah. Um, there's some stuff you could do with this one. The most interesting thing is Sergo Op because in humans, this is what it does to a human. It gives you scaly skin and a fish fin growing out of your back. Dum 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 dum. Now, why the venom of the Sur snake does this is completely inexplicable. Also, it's possible that the idea here isn't that this is actually what the Sur snake venom is supposed to do. It's just something that it can be used to do. Oh, that's another thing I vaguely recall is that the information about this is something that even the Aquans don't actually fully understand because Sergo Op isn't something the Aquans actually have as a daily practice because of the fact that all the current living Aquans are aquatic. There aren't any air breathing Aquans left. So they have no reason to use Sergo Op. And even more so, they don't really have any reason to want to reverse it. Now, this is an interesting thing because of the fact that it's like, what level of bioengineering expertise would be required for something like this? Because one of the interesting things about the ambergris element is that the Aquans are hinted at being a Mad Max like post cataclysm society where they'd forgotten the basic core mechanics of so many of the things that their ancestors had done, like how the flip they created Sergoop in the first place, and why they'd chosen to have everyone do that instead of, living on the surface. Another interesting plot point is the idea that there was a war in the past between the air breathing and water breathing Aquans. Because the one guy basically just like come out right and says it. Why would that have come about? Exploring Aquan history. There is a lot of room to explore there. It's one of those episodes that's fun because it introduces an idea and then lets you wonder about it and doesn't explain it. Because the core of the episode is actually escaping the idea. It's not about getting to know the idea and getting to become familiar with the idea. No, 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 no. It's more about trying to survive the idea and not become a fish person permanently. Yeah, the crew of the Enterprise kind of wanted to not be fish people for the rest of their lives. And to do that, they had to get to venom out of one of these monsters. They're kind of big, or at least the adult ones are. Wonder how large the baby one would be. Oh, yeah, that's the other thing is that these things are actually apparently amphibious. Interesting. Yeah. Well, Munians. Let's go look at the Munians. The Waters is an artificial object. That's the one thing we know for beyond a shadow of a doubt about the Waters is that it's artificial. Who the flip created it, and where did these people have as their actual origin point? There's an idea to ponder. Oh, and they did actually have starships, and they could leave their planet in those starships. Oh, yeah, also is that the Monians don't actually control the tech that is used to artificially stabilize the waters. Thus, the Monians. It's one of those things where there's like this alien civilization that exists because some other civilization put it there. What exactly that is an interesting question. Oh, yeah, that's right. They make a plot point that the Monians were at one point in time nomadic people drifting through the stars until they found the waters and then decided to settle in the waters for reasons. And yeah, which gives you like a double mystery because like I mentioned earlier, it's like why did the Monians leave their homeworld then? Because the Monians didn't leave their homeworld in order to create the waters. Let's see if there's anything interesting about the field reactor. Here's what it looks like. This massive thing is the core of the waters. The water pressure here is so great that they had to specially modify the structural integrity field of their shuttlecraft just to get close enough to look at it. Mm, okay, this is supposedly over 100,000 years old, and that the civilization that built it used to live in the waters. Okay. And that's all about all we know. Okay, then. Well, that's that. Like, they did actually have like some seriously cool looking cities here. 100 millennia ago, they launched a field reactor into orbit and used an elaborate kinetic transfer system to move all of the water and everything in it into space. And that took 200 years to complete. Hmm. Interesting, to say the least. Yeah, why exactly people did this, no one knows. But they did? Eh. Again, giant freaking mystery box. Would be fun to explore. Because that's the thing with mystery boxes. Everyone wants to look inside the box. And I'm done here for today. Alrighty, well, whoever's watching, I hope you had fun. See you guys later. Hmm.